Okay, hi everyone. Today we will be discussing the newest Netflix movie that I think everyone really is going to fall in love with, or at least it's going to get a lot of conversation starting, and we're going to be talking a lot about it, which is the new movie, The Devil All the Time. I, for one, am a fan. I was hooked throughout the entire movie. Notable actors, Tom Holland, Robert Patterson, let me remember the man's name, the man who plays It in the movie It. All of the actors were absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed watching this film. It's about 2 hours and 18 minutes. You like literally, I mean, I felt the hours. I did feel the hours, but they were so good that I was like, oh, I don't want it to end. Or like, you know, if I did want it to end at a certain point, it was just to see like how this was going to end. It's all about power relations. This entire film really discusses power relations and how, you know, depending on how much you know about God or how much you pretend to say you're a follower of him or a true believer of him, that kind of pushes you in this. And if there was this such thing as a hierarchy, it would really just be like God, preacher, followers. And then if you are a non-believer, according to according to Gary, Private Gary Matthew Bryson, you may be seen as, what was the word that he used? A heathen. And this was when he was in the car with Sandy and Carl, and he was really discussing just like, hey, I may have not grew up in the church that much, but I was baptized, so I'm not like these other heathens, you know, or I'm not a heathen in general. So really, it was just looking at the different perspectives that everyone has on God and how much power God has in your life and how much he can affect your life. Preacher Preston Teagarden basically described it to me in the best way possible. Like, he basically summed up the whole idea of the movie, where he was talking about how some people will use God's name in vain and they will commit the act of blasphemy by doing sinful acts and trying to pretend like it's, you know, what God wants from them. Now, he was really talking about himself, but he just couldn't see it. Like, he was describing all of these acts, but he couldn't see himself as being in that moment, you know, someone who had been blasphemous and who had been using God's name in vain. No, this isn't Meade, Ohio. This is West Virginia. So he's a new preacher. He's taking young girls and he's basically manipulating them into performing sexual acts for him in the name of God, as if, you know, God wants them to perform these acts to show their appreciation, to really give their full selves to God. That's why they're doing it. They believe in this. And we're just really seeing this man who was basically a loser his whole life, find power in the most disgusting way possible through a religion that people believe in and are dedicated to. And, you know, they rely on these people in West Virginia. They rely on this religion in this small town to get by, to get through their day-to-day lifestyle. So the fact that he would manipulate them like that was absolutely unacceptable. But it does draw the question of, why are the lines of blasphemy so blurry, and how have we seen this take place in history over and over again, where someone oversteps their boundaries when you trust them to lead you or guide you in the right way. The Devil All the Time really plays deeply into this idea of generational curses, beginning with this promise that Willard Russell's mother makes, where her name is Emma, where she prays and, you know, kind of promises God that if he brings Willard back home from World War II, she would make sure that he would marry Helen Hatton, who is a member of the church in West Virginia. And when Willard returns home, she tries her best to get him to fall in love with Helen, but she falls in love instead with someone else. And because this is a promise that Emma can't keep, and the promise between her and God has broken, it seems as if this broken promise leads to Helen and Willard's life spiraling out of control, which brings up the questions like, so did the director have this occur, or did the writer have this occur to show that God exists? Is this like a certainty? Like, okay, these people are having a bad time because a promise to God has been broken? Or was it just coincidence, traumatic coincidence? Or, you know, questions also like, is it fair for Willard and Helen, who had no idea about the promise Emma made, to have a whole generation wiped out and, you know, traumatized? Did God do all of this to show Emma like, hey, you know, you broke this promise, so this is what your life is going to look like. You're going to have to live out this life seeing your loved ones just go through so much pain and trauma, and you can't stop it because you didn't hold up your end of our promise. I personally wouldn't want a situation where someone makes a promise to God for me, and I can't, you know, because I'm not making the promise. It's just like, you can't expect me to uphold a promise that I had no part in making. And, you know, you shouldn't have to pay for someone else's broken promises. Again, I actually have not watched any reviews on this. I haven't read any reviews, nothing. So this is just coming straight off my dome. I might make a second video after I watch a couple stories and see other people's opinions about it. But like who knows if Emma accidentally made a deal with the devil when she was begging for her son's life to be saved, and exchanging a promise where she was like, bring back my son's life and I will give you this. You know, I will also make sure he joins life with another person and they will create life and da 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 da. You know, does that not count as like a faulty deal? Like, who knows who she was actually making that promise to? Even though she thought it was God, maybe somebody else was overhearing her. You really just never know. I really feel like they were trying to give Sandy that role where it was like she knew what she was doing was wrong and she had just got trapped in with the wrong guy, and she's trying to make up for her mistakes because she does that thing where she kind of becomes a whistleblower midway through the movie. But at the same time, it's just like her gave up her husband like she could have, and she never really talked to Carl about why he was so eager to be a serial killer. It was just like she went along with everything. So she was very much so she was so complacent that, you know, she was an enabler. And is it a sin to be an enabler when the things that you're enabling are horrible things? I think so. I think that should definitely count as a sin, and that you have to pay for that. So Sandy's and Carl's ending in the movie, I think it was justice for all those that had been harmed along the way of interacting with them. But Carl wanted to sing whole gospel songs after he just killed somebody, and he was doing a lot. It was a lot of stuff. It was the castration for me, because he would perform castration on his male victims, and it was very much a symbol of him battling with his own masculinity, him wanting to dehumanize someone and to, you know, make them feel emasculated. And, you know, why was that part of his killing ritual? Why was that part of his MO? Like, what was that about? How did he view God? Because it didn't really go into like how Carl viewed his own relationship to God. Did he believe in God, and did he believe in God and also want to be God? Or was it just like or did he just believe that all his sins were going to be washed away by the end of this, and he just has this itch where he just needs to kill and he needs to get it out, and he's taking some type of sexual pleasure in this? We had literally no idea throughout the film, but I might have to watch it again to go back and really dig in and see. Now, my favorite character, I really think may have really been Willard. So the beginning, we get to see Willard return back from the war, World War II, and we see how the war has affected his mental state. We see that his relationship with God has changed because of the war, and because he has seen a man crucified on the cross, and how that really just changed him as a person. I like that Willard had so much depth and complexity, which is something, you know, I've talked about before, where I feel like we're missing in a lot of films and movies. And the reason he was so complex is because of that switch. It was that desire to all of a sudden get in touch with God again once he arrived in Mead, Ohio, and was on his little area, like his little plot of land with his wife. It was that desire to do right by God, but he didn't want to be God. And that's why Willard was very much different from Preacher Teagarden and Carl. He had no desire to be God, but he wanted to please God, and he wanted to live a righteous life so that God wouldn't take anything from him. And it was very interesting because he had no idea. He didn't know about the generational curses that was going to bestow his family. He had no idea of the promise his mother made to God or to whoever she had made that promise to. He had no idea of any of it. So for him to want to devote himself to prayers and to really talk to God and have God understand that, you know, he believes in him and he's grateful for him, and he just wants to live a happy life and be a happy husband and a great father. There are times when you just become very close to the God that you believe in, you know, whatever that God looks like. You become close to that God, and you definitely want to, you get a little paranoid. You get paranoid sometimes, and you do become slightly obsessive. And he took his devotion to a whole new level where he was obsessed, and he was becoming aggressive and violent towards Arvin because he wanted Arvin to understand his devotion to God, and he wanted Arvin to really replicate what he was feeling and how he prayed to God the same way. And it was just, you know, and ultimately it leads to him making sacrifices with a special life in their family and his own life, you know. So spoiler alert for that. But Arvin is completely removed from religion. You know, he's seen his father's demise, and he's linking his father's demise with Christianity and Christ and God as in general. And so he becomes very critical of Christianity. And this is what ultimately saves him, is his ability to recognize that not everything is black and white, and everything is just right or wrong. Some things, there's a blurred line, and you have to understand, and you have to be willing to see that blurred line if you're going to be able to survive life. Arvin is placed in many situations where he would be considered having a disadvantage because he doesn't have the power that comes with being a well-renowned man of faith. He doesn't have that. People kind of are already aware that Arvin is critical of faith. He also doesn't have the fact that he's big and tough. So there was a lot of things working against him, except that Luger. That Luger saved Arvin every single time, and it made me want to buy a Luger. I had never heard of a Luger before, but after watching this film, I think everyone is going to want a Luger because the way it saved Arvin, it was amazing. It was really amazing. It all goes back to that. Even Carl, in the paranoia that starts to occur when you feel like your power is going to be stripped away from you, or you feel like you're about to lose something. All three of them. Carl, paranoid because he's like, Sandy's been acting weird. She might mess this up. We might lose this streak that we've been going on. I might not be able to be this serial killer that I want to be. Teagarden starts to fear that he's not going to be able to be a man of the church no more. He's not going to be able to be a reverend anymore if people find out that he's actually a manipulator, a molester, really, all of that, an abuser. And if people find out that Teagarden is an abuser, he's not going to be able to be a reverend anymore. He fears that. Willard, he starts to fear losing his wife. What are you gonna, you know, he needs his wife. His wife is the first person that really comforts him after the war, makes him feel like he has a home now, he has something that belongs to himself. All three of those people really start to fear loss to the point where they become paranoid, and they, in some way, somehow, they all connect this loss and this paranoia. It all ties back in to their God, and they look to God to save them from these situations that they place themselves in that has nothing to do with God, you know. So it was just such a great film. And again, it's just like, do generational curses actually exist? Or, you know, where's the agency in life? Could Sandy leave if she wanted to? I believe so. Did Teagarden have to go out of his way, or not out of his way? Did Teagarden have to manipulate the young girls in his church? No. Did Willard have to do what he did to the loved ones in his family to to feel close to his wife Charlotte? Did he have to do all that to save Charlotte's life? The answer is no. It was great. I loved it. Like I said, strong 9 out of 10, possibly 9.5. I'm excited now to watch reviews, and then I'll upload something different later in the week about it. But